Well, hello there, everyone. I have right here, I'm talking about for disability right here, talking about for special disability right here. And you see right here, talking about for citizenship, and the reason why I'm talking about this video here was mainly talking about is toward what does it usually mean whenever somebody mentions about the citizenship. I'm like, when we talk about citizenship here, I'm like, that's another way of how do you want to call it, as to where that, for citizens, who yeah, if you're going to be a full citizen of the United States, and also about the things that that you are eligible for, like let's just say that if it's something that you're going to be something that was owed to you from earlier, like if you participated in, and maybe if it's an event, or maybe if it was anything that was educational reasons, or anything such as maybe special opportunities or something like that. But I have right here is this example right here, this infographic right here that shows right here this the American flag right here, and you can see right here that with this wording right here, and I know a lot of designers would even say too that yeah, whenever you're going to be designing something for sure, that you want to go ahead and write on here, or talk about for special charities can mean that you are kind enough to show your support to those of need. And so if I were to be go ahead and like, yeah, whenever we do talk about disability, and then talking about writing, though, and a lot of times you're always thinking as to where that, yeah, that you go ahead and write some of the stuff in your own words. And really, why do you think that you would want to spend so much time just to be able to put together any source of writing? And let's just say that you go ahead and that use like you go ahead and build a collage of different photos right here. Like, let's just say if you're going to be placing these different articles, like, oh yeah, if you're placing the heading or something like that, like right here on the left, and if you were to be writing right here on the right here, and just kind of like writing this column right here, just a little bit, a few paragraphs of what you want to say about this image right here. So really, not everybody's really going to know what all that means right there. So that's why it's like every time you hear the word special right here, you're going to maybe always think as to where, yeah, what does special pretty much mean? That pretty much means it's specifically designed just for you, to be able to help you meet the requirements for the needs, right? And so like anybody that might even say is to where that whenever you do think about a disability, you're also thinking as toward your ability toward whenever you can think, and you think of like, yeah, you think of good creative ideas about stuff, and maybe development of certain kind. But like everybody else would say is toward it, that every time you do think about that, and you're thinking as toward it, yeah, that whenever you do think about your disability, that you necessarily think about that is toward that the things that you can see that maybe not everybody else can see. And let's just say if one of those things is maybe doing something creative, such as to where you're going to go ahead and write in your own words, saying the ability to where you can think, and yeah, we always think about the ability for what we can do, and compared to what we do know, and for what we don't know. And so if you were to be writing like that, and like most teachers might even say too that if they're going to see the students a lot of times, and want to know too that this infographic right here would also show is as to where to just kind of use it as a guide toward anything. Yeah, you go ahead and use that right there for like a background. But then if you were to use the space right here on the right, where you can go and just write about 4 or 5 sentences right here, anything that you want to talk about, right? And so it's like, yeah, so first of all, it's like whenever you do start writing about things that you may not quite know what you really want to write about until you just maybe think the first thing that you're going to be thinking about for sure is that somebody else that could be reading this in the near future, or one of these days that somebody is going to read this, and then they're going to take interest in that. And so if that's really the whole purpose about being being professional, though, that when we do talk about for special citizenship, is to where that you start working on something, and let's just say if you spend about maybe an hour to maybe 2 or 3 hours or maybe a couple of days working on it and putting together something right here, and 102 is that yeah, not everybody's really going to understand what all that means right there. But let's just say that if you were to go ahead and just write down right here, talk about for disability, and so we probably think as to where, yeah, disability is basically, it's a development, right? And if you want to kind of look at that, it's a source of development based on your health condition, based on a person's ability to where that makes them different, than compared to a few other, compared to everybody else, and like everybody else might even say, is to where the different ways of how you want to describe a disability, right? But to me, though, it sure seems that way, that based on my research, though, I would maybe look at that as to where that think of the things that you can do that maybe that yeah, especially if you're going to be applying for a job. Think about your ability, the things that you can do that somebody still needs, from those skills, right? So, like, let's just say that if you just start out the sentence by saying is to where that yeah, that you would never understand what I'm talking about here. So if you were to maybe mention something like right here to where that if you go ahead and like, yeah. So if you were to write down, write down here, say something like yeah, that you understanding the yeah, understanding the topics, and I can just say on here topics, understanding the topics, and if I were to yeah, make that a little bit bigger or smaller, but still that so every time I think about that, and at 102 that anybody who's going to be reading that for sure is probably going to be thinking as to where okay, yeah, that they're not really going to understand what all that means. What do you mean by that? And so it's like, yeah. So it sure seems that way that every time every time you think about that in 102 that yeah, not everybody's really going to know what that means. What that is right there. What that means, and so it's like yeah, I'm trying to make that bigger right there, and but still. But anyway, yeah, understanding the topic, and so it's like so every time you think about that, and you're always want to know too that really that whenever it comes to trying to understand something for sure, that you go ahead and write about something, and like, can you mean that you are kind enough to show your support, or to the local charities whenever it comes to showing support. The disability means that you have condition that affects your ability to where that you have that problem, and with it trying to learn and think. And so I include, I'm like, yeah, a lot of this right here says the same thing, but I just changed a little bit those your characteristics right there to where it just looks a little bit different. But still, right, really, why do you think that you would want to spend so much time writing, talking about the stuff like everybody else would say, is to where that about how many of us that are real good with solving puzzles, and how many of us that really would want to spend so much time trying to piece together information right here whenever it comes to writing. Whenever it comes to writing and thinking and knowing about that, whenever you do write about stuff, whenever you do talk about stuff like in your writing, that do you see things that maybe not everybody else can see? And like everybody else would say, is toward, well, really, that it's really just a bunch of talks, or something like that. But still, that every time I think about that, and 102 is toward it. When we do think about special, though, that you're thinking is toward, okay, yeah, special pretty much means is toward that there's something about yeah, there's something about this person, like, yeah, that it all goes by saying is to where that you go ahead and start out with a clear picture, with a clear graphic about showing a background right here. This is who you are and for what you had to present, and if you were to actually show a story right here on the right about anything that you want to talk about, and let's just say that yeah, it's all about finding something real interesting about it, right? And every time you do think about that, and you're warned toward it, really, if all you really have to do just to really better understand it, if anything, it's only about maybe 2 or 3 pages that you really have to look at. And like everybody else would say, is to where if that's only about maybe 1 or 2 pages right here, both left and right angle, and so it's like, so if this right here, if you would actually be looking at this right here, and 102, that yeah, this, if you were to, yeah, both left and right. So if this right here was 2 pages right here, if all you had to do was just look at 2 pages right here, and you would be able to understand what this person had to talk about right here. But it's like you have right here for special, and so really, it don't really explain the whole story very well. If like everybody say that yeah, well, I really don't get it unless if you actually explain a little bit about what you put together right here. But talk about for special right here. You have right here is the American flag right here in the background, but then you have right here on the bottom right here where it talks about citizenship. And everybody else might say that, yeah, for page number 4, that, I don't quite understand what that means right there. What about citizenship? And so it seems like, yeah, so every time you think about that, and you're always wondering toward every time you do work on something, and maybe if it is maybe a work of art, or maybe if you were writing in something, that kind of takes your mind somewhere else, right? So it's like, is that really a habit that like anybody, yeah, anybody, if you want to do something creative, that you have the habit where you go ahead and think of another idea about, okay, yeah, well, whenever you do start writing, and maybe whenever you do start drawing a picture or something, or maybe whenever you do start writing down and maybe doing any sorts of genre, I'm like, yeah, whenever it comes to just creative writing, that, you go ahead and do that toward it, that you go ahead and start working on something immediately, and let's just say that after about maybe 2 or 3 minutes, you go ahead and pause from that, and you come back and work on something else. It's kind of like a back and forth right here. So, like everybody else would say, is to where that if it's really recommended really to do that. But I'm like, if you got a lot going on, for sure, that if you think as to where that for any reason at all, that for what you have to work with right here, that if you're kind of having to go back and forth right here, to where you go ahead and work a little bit more on this paragraph writing, and then go ahead and work a little bit more about the editing right here for the infographic. And same right here on this page right here, whenever it comes to special, right? And I included this background right here that talks about that whenever it comes to understanding about special. And so it's like, yeah, so whenever you look into a child's eye, especially, that you want to know is toward it, yeah, that something that kind of gets your mind in typical thinking, for sure. But every time you do look at that, and you're always thinking as to where that, yeah, special pretty much means. And so if you were to go ahead and I'm like, yeah, use a piece of art like that right there, and right here it looks like this piece of art right here. You have right here is the American flag right here going in the background, but then you have right here is that you have this the story log, and like everybody else would even say, is toward it. So if you're going to be spending time writing, talking about a disability, or maybe talking about anything that you were trying to, like, yeah, anything that you anything that you were dreaming about, anything that you were thinking about from earlier, but like everybody else would maybe want to know too, is toward it. That, yeah, the things that you can see that not everybody else can see, and that's why it seems like that talk about for development, right? And early development, and maybe not every doctor is maybe going to understand You know, but yeah, the early, the earlier development, and so the way I think about it too is toward that whenever you're going to be working on something for sure, you're always want to know too that why don't like all the other teachers might say that how often is it really required to listen to your students and listen to the your your students and your children, that anything that they're working on, why does it always have to be based on the requirements? And like everybody else might say, is to where that if you allow them to where they can freely you allow their creative mind to do creative things, right? And like everybody else might say, is to where maybe one of those reasons is maybe because it becomes too much of a distraction. Yeah, it becomes too much of a distraction, and whenever you're trying to get through a lot of the assignment requirements, for sure, number one, that a lot of teachers would say is to where that if you're going to be that's not really learning whenever it comes to if you're doing anything creative and doing the things the way that you want to learn the things that you really recommend, or maybe putting the paragraphs in your own words instead of going by the requirements. But still, that whenever I do think about a disability, whenever I think about special disability, and talk about for citizenship, I also think about that as to where that the disability means that you have a condition that affects your ability to where what you have, that problems are trying to learn and think. So it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking as to where what's one thing about you that is really needed by, like everybody else would say, is where if you're going to be filling out a lot of these job applications for sure, if you're going to be doing any sorts of work for sure, that it seems like a lot of times that you're going to say on there about the needs. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. Interesting. What's interesting, and interesting needs, and so every time you think about that, and you're warned toward, okay, yeah, the interesting needs, and you're thinking as toward, oh, really, that interesting needs, and so whenever you do look at something like this right here, and thinking as toward it, you go ahead and put right there the American flag right there in the background, right? And at the same time, it's like, you put together about maybe four or five different pieces right there, and not everybody's really going to know what that's about until you go ahead and write in here in the wording right here, talk about for charity. So like, let's just say that the first thing that you were thinking about whenever you were working on this artwork right here was like, whenever you look at a child's eyes right there, do you think, for any obvious reason at all, do you think about that is like you want to show a little bit more support? I'm like, yeah, whenever you look at a child's eyes, just like that right there, whenever you look at their eyes, is that supposed to be like any sorts of sign, any sorts of language that they're talking to you? And to me, though, like any doctors might even say too that whenever you look into a child's eyes, for sure, that do you see this pretty please sign on their eyes whenever it comes to from what is I'm like, yeah, whenever you actually look at any sorts of infographic like that, and if you actually look at a child's eyes, can you really read their mind, and maybe can you really read over the things that they're struggling with, and maybe a lot of things that that come in development, right? So it's like, yeah, so each time you think about anything, whenever it comes to disability, though, right, a disability citizenship, that pretty much means is where that they got a condition that they were born with, right, and a lot of things that they were born with that limits their ability to where that it's harder for them to do things that meet the requirements, and it's harder for them to think over the things that they're trying to do, and compared to the things that they're trying to set their mind for, and that is why it seems like that every time you think about that, and you're thinking is toward, okay, yeah, you go ahead and show a little bit of support just by, having some source of charity or some source of donation and, fundraiser or something like that. And so that is why it seems like that you go ahead and use a painting right here, and let's just say that, yeah, any source of graphic artist would say is toward it, you go ahead and put together a piece of artwork like this, but then go ahead and put like a background right here. Put a background right here to where that, yeah, a background right here to where that it would represent anything such as is to where, like, yeah, you put a background right here, and you go ahead and, like, yeah, you put it right here for special right here. So whenever you're going to be working something like this right here, and you want to know too, that is that really supposed to tell your audience anything in particular about that? What exactly is that supposed to mean right there? And if you look at it real closely right there, that everybody else must say that if you actually looked at that real closely, for sure that if you were to actually look at that real closely, that does that really tell you anything? And it's like, well, that right there, like, it looks like does that right there, does that look like citizenship, or does that right there, does that look like right there is a child that is asking for your opinion about something, or it's asking you to go ahead and, like, for those for those citizens that for those who are willing to participate in this program or something like that. So every time anybody were to ask you about citizenship, what exactly do you think that necessarily means? Whenever anybody, if anybody were to ask you about about citizenships, whenever it comes to citizenships for charities, or maybe when it comes to school, or maybe educational reasons, or anything by the state or something like that. So really, every time you do think about that, and you want to know too that citizenship, citizenship pretty much means is toward that you are a citizen. I'm like, yeah, the things that you are pre-qualified to receive, right? And the things that you earned, that you just for participating, or just for helping out with yeah. So and I know that it could mean a number of reasons, really, but still that but when we talk about citizenship, especially, that it's like we might think is toward it. Okay, yeah, citizenship. Citizenship pretty much means is toward it. You're a member. Like, yeah, you were born here in the country, and the things that you earned that from over the 6 months periods of time, that these are the things that you are eligible for, but there just needs to be more information that is provided. Just to clarify that, or something like, or yeah, say something like that. So, citizenship can mean a number of things, but if I were to mention on here about the interesting needs right here, so like everybody else might say, is toward if you're the main reason why a child were to be using this right here, mainly because of the fact that they're trying to get feedback from other people, from everybody else about, that, if you're willing to show a little bit of support about, this event that's going on here in town, and maybe about special, like, yeah, what is so special about all this right here? So let's just say that if I was, doing the Photoshop work right here, but let's just say that the original idea that I was coming up with right here was actually was to go ahead and put together something right here artistic, right? But like everybody else would say, is to where do you think that it would work? Is to where it's supposed to represent to where if you're trying to paint a picture of somebody in particular, and let's just say that this illustration right here is supposed to represent special, right? And somebody special, and what does that usually mean for special citizenship? That means is to where that anybody who's looking at it has been there, to where that they've been there in that situation, and they're able to tell just by looking at the child's eyes, and they're able to tell that, yeah, you look into a child's eyes. What does that usually mean whenever you look into a child's eyes? And you're like, well, they're really are trying to tell you something. And let's just say if they're trying to speak to you, or maybe if they're about ready, I'm like, yeah, they're trying to they're trying to tell you something, but they don't know how to say it. And so really, that there is something special. And so yeah, so whenever I was looking at this right here, if you look real closely at this right here, the way I painted this right here, but like everybody else would say, that if you were to be actually looking at an actual photograph, for sure, that you would maybe be able to see what goes on in a child's eyes. Like, let's just say if you're going to be at an actual birthday party or an event, that you would be able to see real clearly through those images about what the children what they're saying. And everybody else might say that really there's only so much that you can really tell just by looking at that still images, right? But still, you can probably tell and see a little bit more just by looking at still images. Whenever you look at still documents, that you're able to tell a lot of things. By the way, that the things that you're able to tell is that what exactly is it that people are saying? I guess that's the whole part. That's the whole part about special, is that the things that you see that maybe not everybody else can see and realize, and like everybody else might say, is to where that you go ahead and put together right here this document right here, and let's just say this document right here is really supposed to explain to everybody here, everybody looking at this, and you're one or two that the things that need to be explained a little bit more clearly, and the things that need to be recognized at first, and you're thinking as to where really what's special about that. And so you're thinking as to where that while you were working on this, and you're thinking as to where, okay, yeah, nobody else really understands what all this means right here until you actually put together a masterpiece right here of something that maybe that yeah. So it's like, yeah, really, what do you think that that's really telling anybody who's going to be looking at this right here? And everybody else would say is to, well, really, anybody who's going to be looking at that for sure is maybe going to say is that for sure that number one, that special citizenship, special pretty much means is to where that it was specifically designed to be able to help that person at need, just to be able to get the assistance that they need, just to be able to proceed with the requirements, right? But like everybody else would even say too, that that how often are we really going to look at that as to where a need based on the ability for what that the children can do. Yeah, well, you're too young to really to understand what all that means right there, or anything that we were talking about from earlier. Yeah, well, you really are too young really to understand it all, or you don't even qualify to understand what all this means right here, or you were not even there really to realize what all that happened and what all that had to be done and all that. And so that is why it seems like whenever we look at still documents like these right here, is that really supposed to tell you anything? And like everybody else would say, is to where if you actually looked at it very carefully, then maybe it would tell you something. And one of those things is maybe going to be is to where that that whenever it comes to the special, though, that there's something special about that was worded. Like so, the first thing that I was thinking about, especially, is that is about disability. And so people might say that yeah, disability. If you have a disability, of course, that you got problems. Not everybody really wants to deal with it. Like everybody else would say, is to where maybe everybody else would say that they would have you take care of the paperwork and allow them to where they can go to the concert. They can go ahead and get tickets to go to the concert or to the festival or maybe to the amusement park, and then they would have you go ahead and take care of the 5 or 15-page documents that all that was required, right? So like let's just say that any application that you were working on, for sure, how often is it maybe going to be 50% chance that somebody's going to say is to where that you go ahead and take care of all that paperwork, and then we'll go ahead and go to the concert, or we'll go ahead and go to the movies. yeah, we'll go ahead and go to the movies and you can go ahead and take care of that paperwork because we don't want to bother with it. So it's like, yeah, so it's like, really, anybody might even say, too, that how often are you really going to get that? Especially customer service, especially if it's customer service work, right? You're probably thinking is to where, yeah, especially if it's customer service, that any paperwork that you do there at the customer service counter, for sure, that they're going to tell you that, we really don't want to bother with all that paperwork, so we'll go ahead and just let you take care of filling that out, or we'll go ahead and pay you. We'll go ahead and pay the personnel a little extra just to be able to take care of all that paperwork. You don't want to sit there for not even for 15 minutes to look over that paperwork. And let's just say if let's just say if it was just to be able to order tickets. If it was ordering tickets or something like that. So what makes the work that you do so special? And like all the other special disability children might even say this, to where that number one, you can maybe even tell somebody is to where I took care of it this morning, so you don't have to worry about it. Or so a lot of times it seems like the first job that you're going to maybe getting, the first thing that you're going to be getting would be is like maybe something that's going to be on the top priority from this morning, right? And you're thinking is toward, what would be the first chore that had to be taken care of this morning? And one of them, one of them was to fill out the paperwork and have the paperwork ready to go in the mail or something like that, or to order the tickets, or maybe if it was to have some savings coupons available or something like that. But still, it's like, so every time you do think about that, and it's like, not everybody wants to deal with paperwork for sure. And that is why it seems like that, you leave that paperwork with somebody and the chances are that, I took care of it already. And so it's like, So how often, like everybody says, to really, what is so special about that? But say you for special citizenship right here. But I include this right here, disability means, and so it's the same wording right here, but just in different characters right here. But still, it's like so anybody who's going to be on disability, right? And you're thinking as to where that you spend so much time writing in paragraph after paragraph, and maybe in text wrapping, you go ahead and write a story right here just to talk about, the things that you can see and the things that you're working on. And so it's like whenever you do start writing, that the first thing that you're going to come to the mind is to where to really, that, who all can really understand what all this says right here at the bottom. And, anybody might say that, well, it needs to be, try to make it interesting. Your reader needs to take for the most part, right? Your reader needs to take interest in what you were writing about and what you were working on, so that way they can verify, if it's interesting, anything by development, right? So it's like anything for what makes that so special, right? But still, that but talking about right here of whenever it comes to citizenship, that you have right here is the background right here, but it's like, not everybody's really going to understand what all this means right here. So whenever I was putting that together right there, I was just thinking too, is to where that really that any children are going to probably say is to where that what does special pretty much mean is to where does that pretty much mean is to where that there's something about the work that person does that is still needed, even though that special attention means is to where that they during the time so it's like if most of us know what that means is to where special pretty much means is to where that especially designed in a special special needs, meaning is to where that the work that is needed just to be able to accomplish something, and then also it's another way of how you want to call it, is to where that your ability to where you can learn, and your ability to where you can think, and your ability to where that you're able to the trade back and forth, for the communication, right? So every time you do think about you look into a child's eyes, and you're 102, does that really tell you anything? Whenever you look into the picture right there, does that really tell you anything in particular? But still, it's like, yeah, you start writing right here, and everybody else would say is to where you go ahead and start writing right there, and not everybody's really going to know what you're talking about. If you look real closely right here, some of these are kind of all broken up right here, but most importantly, whenever you do think about our disability, do we always think about the ability for what we can do, any restrictions compared to what you know and for what you don't know. And so every time you think about your disability, it's like, what exactly is it do you think that maybe everybody else is thinking about whenever they read your characteristics of your writing? What exactly is it that you think that your readers are thinking about whenever they read that? And you're thinking as toward, okay, I don't quite understand what you're talking about right here. And whenever you first start writing about something, for sure that the first thing that comes to your mind for sure is mainly about that not everybody can see what you can see, number one. So that's why it seems like that not everybody else can see what you can see, and not everybody can really think what you can think, and that's why it seems like that, I'm going to go ahead and just write this down now, and I'll explain later, what I came up with right here. And so that is why it seems like that, nowadays with like Instagram and even Twitter, that anything that comes to your mind, anything that you want to share, right? But it's like you're always worried to where that anything that you were writing about, that you were not whenever you were first working on it, that was stuff that you were thinking about, right? It was not something that you were really working on for any class assignments or anything. This is the stuff that you were thinking about from earlier. So in case if anybody were to ask, is that I was this was something, I was thinking about this earlier. This is the stuff that I was thinking about. This is stuff that I was thinking about. So whenever you think about things, whenever you do think about things, that's not the same thing as what you call that's not what everybody else was saying earlier. That what somebody said earlier was just a little bit of the opposite, to where that whenever you're thinking about things, really, like everybody else say, that that's not the same thing as communicate. And so it sure seems that way. That it's I think it's it's sad sometimes too, the way I think about it, is that every time I think about it, whenever you think about things, you're not really spreading the word to somebody else, whenever you do that. So the teachers are going to maybe say thinking is the same thing as guessing. So if not everybody can see what you're thinking about for sure, the teacher is going to go ahead and mark off. They're going to go and grade the work and all that. And so really, if not everybody understands what you were working on at the beginning there first, right? So that's why it seems like the best solution for that would be is to where that if you're able to communicate with somebody, like everybody else would say, is to where that whenever you're thinking about something, for sure, whenever you think about something, you actually pass it on to one of your best friends, and maybe if you talk about it to maybe 5 other people, and maybe people may say that that's the best way of how to spread your opinion about how to get the job done a lot of times. And it's like, just by looking at still images like that, and you're 102, that's like the only way that you can spread the word about something. That's like one of the only ways that you're really able to get the job done, right? And so whenever you're thinking about things, you're not really you're not really doing anything right away whenever you think about things. So whenever you do think and whenever you are writing, then maybe not everybody is able to see what you're doing, and that's why it seems like everybody else might say that, yeah, while you're writing, that the first thing that I think about is that, yeah, for who that could be reading this, and for who that could be looking at this, and for whom that could be concerned about what this says right here. So that's the first thing that I'm going to think about, whenever I start writing. And that is why it seems like that, if you're going to be writing any sorts of poetry, poems, or any sorts of if you're going to be writing a story about something, maybe anything creative or anything that you're going to be talking about with your best friends and all that, and you're thinking is toward it, yeah. Whenever you do think about your disability, a lot of times it seems like that it pretty much means is toward it the things that were very difficult for you to understand compared to everybody else. That it made you totally different compared to everybody else, and that is why it seems like that that every time you think about your disability, you really want to be somewhere where you're away from the crowds, and maybe somewhere where you'll be able to concentrate more on the things that you like, the things that you like and the things that you're willing to share with somebody else about. And so that is why it seems like that every time you do work on something, and you're thinking is toward, okay, yeah, for how many people they're really going to be looking at, and how many people are going to understand what you put together right there. But one thing that I did add right here is the American flag right here going in the background. And so yeah, like about every Monday morning or so, you sing the Star Spangled Banner, right? And every Monday morning or so, you go ahead and sing the Star Spangled Banner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And whenever class starts, right? And that is why it seems like that whenever we talk about special, though, what's one thing that really makes you feel proud? The first start of the school day would be is this toward that, whenever the teacher, offers to listen to you based on your opinions and based on your suggestions and all that, and like everybody else would say is toward it, if you want to go ahead and pick a favorite moment, if you want to pick a favorite, but still. People might say is toward it, that, the class more likely is going to listen to you, maybe if you can get everybody to come up, to an agreement, right? If you can get everybody to agree on the things that you talked about, and, maybe the first start of the morning, but then maybe by Friday afternoon, and then, they'll go and give you full credit if they see and realize the work that you were doing. And that is why it seems like that, working this right here, and then they have right here is this wording right here, but still, your ability, and then for what you can do, and so every time you think about special, though, that like all the other children, that anybody else might even say that special seems like it makes you different, compared to everybody else. But really, that what's one thing that they can find that you do? What's one thing that the companies or anybody else who does make that request, think of one thing that they can get from you that they can't get from anybody else, and they might even say is toward it, well, number one, you can maybe ask somebody, well, what do you even need, from all this work right here? I'm like, well, we still need it, just because that it's getting attention, or like everybody else might say, is to where that we came across some of your artwork right here, but we would like to know what does all this say, and what all this mean right here, and so I got that almost all the time, especially if you're going to be writing in cursive, everybody. If you're going to be writing in cursive, maybe not everybody is really going to know what all that means right there. So if you were to write, right on here, like maybe page 4 or 5, if you were to write in cursive right there, and if you were to work hard enough to where it makes it real interesting for somebody else, and if that idea approaches somebody, And they're all thinking as to where, yeah, well, that's interesting. Well, if you can tell me a little bit more of what you came up with right there. And so that is why it seems like that, every time you think about that, and I want to know, too, that, whenever you first start working on something, you really were only want to spend 5 or 10 minutes working on it, but like everybody else would say is to where that, really, anything real important, though, and want to know, too, is to where that the first question that somebody may ask is to where, what does that pretty much mean whenever, if there's an application to ask about special citizenship? What sorts of answer do you think that that best describes that? And everybody else would say is to where that, I know exactly what that means right there. And so do you think that all that can really be explained all on one-page document right here? So it's like, so every time you do think about that, and you're thinking as to where that, so whenever you do think about that, one-page document right here. So every time you do think about that, and you're wondering to where that, does everybody really understand what all this means right here? And people might say is to where maybe 3 pages. If 3 pages is good, to where, you go ahead and put all that together to where a reader is able to understand what all that you put together. And maybe if they're saying is to where, I have right here thinking, I was thinking. So whenever you're thinking, not everybody can really see what you have right here. And so that's why, like everybody else would say, that a number of times that I've tried, that it sure seems that way, that the teachers and everybody else would say is to where that, you really are not really doing anything right now at the moment. What you're doing is you're just sitting there, or you're just kind of glazing up there at the ceiling or something like that. But like everybody else would say, is that whenever you're writing, though, you're also communicating. I'm like, yeah. So it's like, so like everybody else might even say that whenever you are going to be looking at it like an infographic like this right here, that right there, like, yeah. All these still images right here, and I think the problem is that not everybody understands what all that is supposed to mean right there. So that is why it seems like, maybe they don't realize all the details right away, and so that is why it seems like that, what is the best solution for that? And you could probably think is to where that, well, the best solution for that is to where that you go ahead and, for sure, that, while you're working on something like this, you go ahead and keep it saved, and you go ahead and schedule an appointment to where you can actually talk to somebody about that. You talk to somebody about it, and then you spread the word about anything that you have to say about this. And, not everybody can read everybody's mind, and so that's why it seems like that, that whenever you're going to be working on something, for sure, that, how do you even know if it's really, desperately needed or not? How do you even know if it's needed, or maybe if it's useful? And somebody might say that, the first thing that you're going to be thinking about is that, disability. And so you have right here, about a few paragraphs right here, but like everybody else might even say that, that number one, that if you're going to be writing, maybe all together, if you're going to be writing, and maybe if you're going to be writing, maybe if it's poetry or something like that, let's say maybe if you write about maybe 150 characters, maybe if you do wind up spending about 40 minutes working on it, and 102 that, you spend at least a couple of hours of your time, maybe during the weekend, working on something, you go ahead and start jotting down, wordings of a saying to where what you got to say about this, and you're thinking as to where that, the more you write, and maybe the more confusing it's going to be, but, maybe not every time, right? You tell your readers that, you're trying to make this, your research and your story a little bit more interesting. So you tell them to go ahead and look at these images right here on the left, but then continue reading right here, just trying to make it a little bit more interesting. But, first thing is first, right? That the first thing that you think about is that, if it's going to be 3 pages long, for sure, that how do you know if that person, if that reader is not going to read through this and just to understand what all this means right here? And that is why it seems like that the first thing that you're going to maybe think about is that, the first thing that you're going to maybe think about that you're going to want to talk about for sure is that we're talking about the future about our educational system and the things that you would like to see coming to our schools, and maybe if it's anything about what's called the educational programs or maybe improvements, and maybe something about to where that whenever you look into a child's eyes, that you actually can tell that they are trying to speak to you and that they're trying to ask you for a favor, or they're trying to show some source of support and communication, right? So I know that everybody else would say that whenever you look into it, whenever you look at a graphical image like this, that it's like, whenever you look real closely at that, for sure, it's going to be a painting of a child, right? It's going to be a painting of a little girl right there. But let's just say that if you were to use it for a graphical, like a wallpaper design, like for wallpaper, right? You're going to use that for like wallpaper, but if you would actually publish this onto an actual website, and if you were to say something like, I've been thinking for a long time now about the things that I've been working on for a long time, and the things that I was able to accomplish, and these are the things right here. And so if you were to be talking about like I put together a layout right here, and let's just say that if it was for a charity or something like that, or like maybe for a support team. And you think as to where that, all that paperwork and all that reading, I don't really want to bother with that, but still though, that if you were to actually look closely at it, and anybody might even say as to where if it really becomes interesting to that reader, for sure, they would say that they'll go ahead and take the time to read through the details right there, and want to know too that, if it becomes interesting to some other readers and publishers, for sure, they would want to look at it, and then they'll go and say is to please go ahead and include some source of contact information in case if we would like to talk to you more about that work, or in case if we want to go ahead and reach out to the publisher just to talk to them about some of that work. And stuff like that. You talk about for development, right? And but still, that I know with me though that whenever it comes to special though, that it's like every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking as toward I know exactly what it means. It means is toward that you need that specifically designed for your purpose and for the things that you need assistance with, and maybe that there's something about you that's desperately needed for the requirements and all, but still, can we really look at special as to where that your work is needed by somebody else? And so it sure seems that way that every time I think about it, it sure seems that way that anything right here that is needed, and you'll want to know too that whenever you do work on something, for sure, that how do you even know if it's really needed right away? And somebody might say that, well, really, that if you have somebody that if you have maybe 5 other readers that are going to be looking over this document right here, and let's just say that you got people asking about that, and what is this supposed to mean right here, and what is that supposed to mean? And wordings like that. But the way I think about it too, that when we do speak about graphics right here, and you have it here for special right there, and so you got right there is the graphics right there. But anyway, but that's what I want to talk about, everybody, is that knowing that number one, that if you're going to be a publisher though, for sure that people might say is toward that anything that you were working on, for sure that really, what is so special about that, and even though that's something that yeah, well, you went ahead and wrote that yourself, and you went ahead and came up with a little bit of a scenario there about you go ahead and work a piece of art right here, and you go ahead and just write right here like a little so far saying about what you have to say about this stuff right here, and but one of those is going to be about citizenships. Yeah, one of them is going to be about citizenships, and you'll want to know too that yeah, well, citizenships but still that what does it mean to be a citizen? And everybody else may say that yeah, well, it's more than just that you were born and raised here in the country. It also means as to where that for the resources, yeah, it's about the resources. The resources that yeah. So it's like I can include right here or talk about for the resources. The resources yeah, I know it. In development, and the resources in development yeah, the resources in development. So each time I think about that, and always thinking too, I'm like, yeah, the resources in development, and so every time you do think about that, and you're thinking as to where yeah, if you know what citizenship pretty much means, right? I'm like citizenship. Every time you do mention about citizenship, it's like even on an application, whatever those applications even ask about citizenship, that citizenship pretty much means is to where that yeah, you represent for if you were born here in the country and in the things that for what you are pre-qualified for, and based on benefits, and then based on yeah, that your paperwork and the processing status and everything. So every time you go through all that paperwork, for sure that that seems like that yeah, special citizenship. So you got the idea just by what you call the first thing that you were thinking about is that you look at your own photo ID whenever you're thinking about that. Okay, yeah, your class photograph, your portrait, your class photo. You were actually looking at your photo right there, but then you decide to go ahead and put together right here like this writing right here. But really, what does writing really tell us in particular? But like everybody else might say that yeah, writing pretty much tells us that like if you were to actually take time to write the details about like what like yeah, the things that you would like to see and the things that you would like to see improved, and maybe about the things that you see yeah, coming soon or something like that, and or the best ways of how to describe a disability that you are pretty much are telling. I'm like, yeah, it's another source of communication, but like everybody might say that a number of times that you tried, though, it's like yeah, that whenever every time you do try to write about something, for sure that the first thing that comes to your mind is to where that that don't really make any sense, or so yeah, so every time you want to go ahead and write about something, that you think that it's best to go ahead and put on here that if you put a question mark right there, do you think that could also mean is to where that you're trying to get feedback by your reader, but then if you put like maybe a comma or a parenthesis or something like that in between the wordings are the saying right here. And so it's like so every time you think about that, and you're thinking as toward, okay, yeah, you go ahead and write about something, but then you don't really think during the time, you don't really think about that to where that you actually are asking somebody, you're inviting somebody else to join that conversation, or to ask for their feedback about something. So that's why it seems like that first of all, it's like to go ahead and put together maybe 3 pages, full paragraphs about, just to talk about, okay, what is it that they're looking at right here? Yeah, that right there, that right there, yeah, that's me right there. That's me right there with the American flag right there in the background, and I have my green, sweater on, trying to take a picture and, yeah, I'm getting ready to work on some of my class homework, and while I was working on my class homework, that I was actually getting some practice with taking down notes and all that. So it's like, yeah, so the first thing that you might think is, okay, yeah, well, okay, we didn't know that, well, we didn't see that, okay, well, we didn't realize that, and so that's something that maybe somebody would probably say, right? And so I think that's really important, really, to know is that whenever you're going to be looking at some of this work right here, just to understand the work, right? And so really, what makes that so special? And everybody else would say is to where that special pretty much means is to where that the resources that have to be provided to them, that not everybody really wants to bother with them right away. So like, yeah, special resources that need to be provided to that person just because that the work that was required there at the beginning could not be provided there right away during that time. And so that's why that so it's like talking about for citizenship, right? But still that but like everybody else would say is to where that why can't there be what's called a citizenship about typical thinking? Whenever you think about things, that you're thinking to your mind about things, right? And it's like, yeah, what you're really, I'm like, yeah, you could also be listening to those to those citizens and want to know anything that they have to say about this and that, and so really that so if I were to be putting this all this together right here, and let's just say if I were to actually put this together in a PDF file or maybe in Distiller, and people might say is to where if you want to go ahead and do a presentation about that at some point, and you'll want to know too that that is that going to be very interesting. And I'm sure people say, yeah, I'm sure anybody who's listening will say that, yeah, sure, let me know. But still, that what makes that interesting. But I just really want to talk about this right here of talking about that whenever I was doing the Photoshop work right here, that I was actually thinking about is to where this right here is supposed to be right here of a little girl. I'm like, yeah, braid all in curls and braids right here, but then include right here is the American flag right here in the background. And 102 is to where that anybody who's going to want to go ahead and write about something, and why do you think that they would even want to write about something in particular? And let's just say that if they think if they just want to kind of get something off their mind, and most of the time that's usually what it is, if they're going to be taking down notes and maybe writing anything in particular, that they're thinking about things and they're going to go ahead and want to write them down, right? And like everybody else would say is to where that that the first thing that you think about whenever you're talking about any sorts of storytelling, right, is that whenever you first think about things, you go ahead and you write them down, even though they may not all make any sense. That some of them may not even make any sense, but if you can go and just write it down, and maybe if you were to include like maybe 4 or 5 pages, worth of something that you want to talk about, and 102 that okay, yeah, I understand a little bit what you're talking about right here. Okay, yeah, I understand a little bit more of what that means right there. Okay, disability means, and so yeah, anything that you were wanting to talk about from earlier, right? And so it's like, yeah, so every time you think about that, and 102 that that whenever you do write down, whenever you do talk about things, especially on a document, that what's one thing that can really show a lot of progress, and just knowing that if you were to go ahead and just write at least 3 pages of something that you want to talk about, and then that later on, and then save that document and then show it, actually show somebody the PDF version of those documents, anything that you want to talk about, and for sure, okay, yeah, it makes a little bit more sense now since you explained it a little bit more right up here on the top paragraph, and so really that just to make it a little bit more easier, right? But like everybody else would say is to where if you're going to be working for a publishing company, for sure, that anything they might say that while you were sleeping that there's been improvements to where you have 5 or 10 people looking at that article that you wrote from earlier, and so it's like so the first thing that you gave, like, yeah, talk about, gifts, but also about special citizenship. And so for the 4th of July coming up, for sure, that's a title that she gave it, but like everybody would say, is as to where that, really, well, what about special citizenship and all that? But still, but the one thing that you really want to talk about is that, what's one thing interesting about all this work right here that makes it real interesting? Anything interesting about it? And people might say is as to where that, yeah, well, I didn't know what you were thinking about, so that's why I had to look just to see what you were doing, and that is why it's like, yeah, whenever we do talk about special, right, that pretty much means it's to where especially made for you, just to be able to help you out for what was needed, right, and but still, it's like, every time you think about that, and you're one to know too that, yeah, you may think that not everybody's going to want to look at it at first just because, well, really, they didn't quite understand it during the time, or they didn't realize it, or they didn't see it during the time. So I just really think that, like everybody would even say, is toward it, you think that it's good to go ahead and include an image like this right here, and just go ahead and to talk to somebody about that, and to say that you went in and wrote right here in about 4 or 5 paragraphs right here about your story, and you were actually talking about disability and also talking about special, and you actually were to tell everybody that the way that you were raised, of course, is that every time you thought about special, that that basically means is toward it required resources that not everybody, people are like, well, you got problems. Whenever you have problems, not everybody really wants to sit down and listen to you. Listen to you or look at the work that you've been working hard on, and that is why it seems like that resources and development. So the first thing that you think about whenever you do think about all this right here is talking about support and the gift of kindness, and so that's the first thing that you might think about, is that in order to be able to get that person's attention for sure, is toward it, if you can sit down with the person for at least 10 minutes to listen to them speak, and just so that way you can show them, any examples of what the problems are, anything that you want to talk about, and stuff like that, and but still, but every time I think about disability, though, it sure seems that way almost all the time. Disability means is toward that your ability to where that what you can do and how you learned and what you can think of based on your health condition, right? And that is why it seems like that every time you think about that, it's like that makes you so totally different compared to everybody else. And that is why it seems like maybe birthdays are supposed to be real special, and that is why citizenship is supposed to be real special. But really, the thing, the most important topic, the resources, the most important thing to remember, though, the fact of the matter is that whenever you do think about the work, based on the progress that you made, right? Think about the things that people need from you, like whenever companies, if somebody's going to be reaching out to you about needs, right? They're going to say is toward, I can't do this unless if you're willing to help me out, and so it's like, so every time you think about that, and you're warned toward it, that special citizenship is to where that you try to get people to like what you do, right? And I guess that's really like kind of like the achievement right here, is to where try to get other people to like. You're trying to get them to like, trying to get them to like or the need, the need of what you do. And so if I were to write that in big letters just like that, and somebody might say that is toward, okay, that anything that you're working on for sure, you gotta get a number of people to like what you do. And so about how many people that really, how many of your viewers are going to like what you put together right there. And So yeah, it's like, yeah, if you have a number of likes and a number of people who want to seek answers for what you put together from what you talked about from earlier, and that is why it seems like that every time you think about special citizenship, that the more questions that come in about something in particular, and people are saying as to where that they would like to have more information about this and that, and so that is why it seems like that whenever you first started working on something, for sure, whenever you first start working on something, that you didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time working on it, number one, but let's just say that if a lot of these pieces right here, these pieces of the puzzle, these 4 documents right here, if you really think that that's really going to make a difference with what's needed, and like everybody says, to where, yeah, well, I really think that it's going to work and it's going to show progress. People can actually see all that work that you put together right there, and they might say that one way of how to promote that work right there is that that you have people, you got somebody listening to what you were doing, and that's why it seems like that. Children reaching out and they're asking about, well, what is so special about that? Well, this person right here has a disability, or yeah, if there's a charity or a fundraiser going on to where this girl, these group of Girl Scouts, they're asking you to show support, to their charities, or maybe to the school, or to their fundraiser, or to the scouting troops, or something like that. And so do you think that maybe something like an infographic would be useful whenever it comes to you go ahead and include a background right there, and maybe include something that that shows, something on the left right here that talks about your company, and then maybe any social media posts or something like that, you include that like right down here on the bottom. So it's like, so anything that you're going to be working on, for sure, and you're thinking as to where that whenever you were first working on this, you were just trying to put together some ideas right here, but everybody else would say as to where, really, what is so special about that? Well, you go ahead and just explain to somebody that knowing that the most important fact about it is like, you have right here's the American flag right here. That really is supposed to tell anybody anything in particular. And you're thinking as to where, well, really, that it's telling that person that there's something about what you do that is needed. There's something about that work that we see right here that we can use it for our website, and that is why it seems like that every time you do think about that, and you're wondering toward it, you look at that and thinking as to where that if that's really like everybody else would say, is to where that really, what is so special about that? But anyway, I'm sure people think about that, but something to think about, huh? Something to consider. But anyway, I just want to share everybody here the top of the story right there. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. And but you talk about for citizenship, special citizenship, and pretty much it's more than just knowing that you were born and raised here in the country, right? It's also about for how you were recognized. It's also about your ability to how you learned and what you learned, and knowing about the things that they came to you by development, like the things that you were working on, and knowing about. I'm like, so it's. But what's the thing that we could probably think about whenever it comes to special citizenship right here, is just knowing is that whenever it comes to a citizenship, and whenever it comes to special, though, is to where that the work, all the work that was all in progress, right? All the work that was all in process, and also from how it was from how it was viewed and how it was reviewed, and knowing that all the work that was all put together, and then for how that is recognized, especially. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.